Hi, I want to talk a little bit today just about schools, education, and you're right as a parent to be sure that your school that your child attends is very appropriately dealing with the issues around eating disorders and mental health. So, right about now in the UK in particular, we're just about to enter into the new autumn term, and you've got parents all over the place worrying about school uniform, lunch boxes, and new stationery. God, stationery! Oh, that was the most important thing to me every school year. Pencil cases, pens, rubbers. What was that about? I have no idea, but I had a real stationery addiction. If only life was only about pencils and rubbers and pencil cases, wouldn't that be great? But obviously, a lot of parents are increasingly worried these days about how is their child going to get on in the classroom in terms of things like bullying. And there are other measures, that kind of metric by which they judge whether that school is going to be appropriate for their child. Whether that's primary or high school, is how academically successful is my child likely to be within this the framework of this particular school. So let me just pose a question. Is that the only judgment of the school? And should it be? So if you are a parent that cares hugely about the well-being of your child, which of course you do, are you only worried about the academic performance of your child? No. And are you only worried about how they're going to get on in the classroom with their peers? No. You're worried about that child's mental well-being, and you certainly should be. Now, we know that 1 in 5 children are very likely, albeit will, experience some degree of an eating disorder throughout their education life. So therefore, it suggests to me, and I hope you kind of believe this to be the case, that actually it's vital that schools play a part in supporting our education and care of our young people to ensure that they can go through their school career having real understanding around the vulnerabilities of eating disorders setting in, and also having a knowledge of how to deal with eating disorders should they set in. Now, in that latter part, I'm going to say that, I hear all the time, I know friends that are teachers or work in the academic environment, so they say how challenged they are by the amount they need to fit in. And there is nothing about this post that's me saying teachers must learn to fix, spot, handle eating disorders in isolation. Of course not. They have an awful lot on their plate, and I get that it's really, really difficult these days. They've got so much more that they have to deal with than perhaps teachers did maybe years ago. It's a terribly difficult environment for them to have to get their heads around in terms of the pastoral care over and above what they're committed to have to achieve on behalf of their children for academic measures. But all that said, I do think it's really, really imperative that every school has an understanding of the risk factors around eating disorders and can at least give some reassurance to parents as to how that school tackles any likely observations around eating disorders, and just to confirm to families that no, we don't let this go by the board. If we suspect something, this is how we handle it. We approach this organisation, or we will call you in, or this is the protocol that we have in place. So I guess I'm saying this as almost as a plea to those of you that are parents and have got children returning to school or starting new school in this autumn period, to say, actually, have you looked at what does that school do? Regardless of whether your child has ever gone through an eating disorder before or is going through recovery or anything, you may have had no experience of it at all before, and God help, I really hope that you don't. But it's always better to have a little bit of kind of preventative measures in place, and therefore perhaps the best thing you can do is just ask them, raise that question. What do you do around eating disorders? We at Wednesday's Child are always happy. As you can tell, I'm very happy spouting on the subject, so I'm always happy to come and deliver a piece of training for teachers and for parents and for pupils about eating disorders and measures that need to be in place. So don't feel that you as a parent can't raise that with a school. It's imperative. It's your child. It's the well-being of that young person. You care. Quite rightly, you should. So if you have a child going back to school or starting a new school this autumn term, raise the question, find out what they do around eating disorders. And of course, if you want to put us in touch with that school, we are very, very happy to help. Thanks a lot.